Thanks for subscribing and liking. Comment below what time you're watching this video. Night had settled over the city, the weight of darkness pressing down as rain mixed with a fine mist fell onto the cobblestones, covering everything in a gray veil. The laughter of people spilling out of the club, the smell of perfume and alcohol mingling in the air, the heavy bass of music vibrating from inside, all created a sense of disorientation. Friends were still talking, joking, debating where to go next, oblivious to the chill creeping in from the street. Among the crowd, a movement caught her eye, a shadow fixed on her as she passed. It lingered just at the edge of vision, still and silent. The face was indistinguishable, swallowed by darkness, but the intensity of its gaze made her pause. A moment later, the figure had disappeared, absorbed by the crowd or perhaps having vanished entirely. A shiver ran down her spine, the uneasy sensation settling in her stomach. She forced a smile, adjusted her hair, and waved goodbye to her friends. The night air was cold, and finding a cab proved difficult. Neon lights blinked in the puddles along the sidewalk. Rain-slicked streets reflected the city in distorted patterns. She kept her head down and moved quickly, feeling the heavy weight of eyes on her back. Her heels clicked against the stones, echoing unnaturally down empty streets. A motorcycle passed in the distance, then silence reclaimed the city. The shadows deepened around her as she navigated familiar yet now alien pathways. Store windows reflected her own face, pale and tired. For a brief second, movement flickered behind the glass, but when she turned, there was nothing. Only her reflection, staring back at her, distorted and cold. Rain began to fall lightly again. Each step hastened, the rhythmic sound of a following footstep, or perhaps a shadow matching her pace, tugging at the corners of her mind. She stopped. The sound stopped. She glanced over her shoulder, empty streets, just the trembling reflections of light in the water. Adrenaline urged her forward. Finally, the apartment building loomed ahead. She fumbled with the keys, her fingers trembling. The door opened with a click, and a sense of temporary safety wrapped around her. Inside, the apartment felt unusually small, silent except for the faint ticking of a clock. Her coat and bag were hastily discarded. She paused at the window, peering out into the darkness. Across the street, nothing moved. The light of a neighboring building faded, leaving the street empty once more. She tried to convince herself it was nothing. Perhaps exhaustion, perhaps overactive imagination. She moved to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, listening to the faint drip of the tap. A soft noise from the balcony drew her attention, a metal scrape against the railing. She froze, the hairs on the back of her neck rising. Slowly, she approached the window. The darkness outside was impenetrable, yet something seemed to linger. Her phone was dead, the screen unlit. She waited, listening. The silence pressed in, thick and heavy. Then the sound returned, closer, deliberate. Someone was climbing. Metal scraped against metal, wet shoes sliding on the balcony ledge. The figure ascended with careful, silent precision, reaching the balcony just outside the glass. A shadow loomed against the glass. No face could be distinguished, just a void of intent, a stillness that made the air itself tremble. She stepped back, hand shaking, trying to process what was happening. The balcony door handle moved slightly, a subtle pressure suggesting a force on the other side. She considered the kitchen knife, grasping it tightly as the figure's weight pressed down on the balcony rail. The scrape repeated, methodical, unnerving. A single breath escaped her lips, loud in the silent apartment. The shadow slipped inside, the air shifting instantly, colder and heavier. Footsteps moved across the floor, barely audible but insistent. She held her breath, every muscle frozen. The figure's outline was tall, unmoving, featureless, like a mask of darkness. The moments stretched, taut with tension. Then, in a flash of instinct, she lunged with the knife. The first strike missed, clattering a chair to the floor. Footsteps halted, a heavy thud vibrating through the apartment. The figure swayed, then rose again. A mask shifted slightly, revealing a pale, featureless face, eyes like empty sockets staring through her. Another swing of the knife met its mark. A low, inhuman sound escaped the figure. It staggered, yet remained. The room became a blur of motion and shadow, the sound of rain against the window and metal rails mixing with heavy breathing. Finally, the figure collapsed to the floor. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. The mask lay on the ground, eyes empty, face unreadable. For a long time, she did nothing, only breathing shallowly, trembling. The knife fell from her hand. Rain continued to strike the balcony, the city below oblivious. Then she noticed it, the shadow stretching across the floor, despite the figure being still. Slowly, it moved. Her heart nearly stopped. The shadow's head turned, revealing the same hollow, eyeless gaze. The lamp flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the apartment completely. The city continued to breathe outside, but inside the night had entered. The balcony door remained open, curtains swaying in the cold wind. She stared at the mask, gripping it tightly, every nerve taut. The moonlight glinted off the glass, throwing fragmented shadows across the floor. The following morning, the building manager forced the apartment door open. The room was empty. Everything was in place, but the balcony door hung ajar. On the fogged glass, a handprint remained, a trace of someone or something that had never been fully inside or outside.